What if Anakin went to Mandalore to help Obi Wan save Satine in the Clone Wars? That's our story for today. Hope you guys enjoy this one, and let's get right into it. Our story begins inside of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, as the Republic-controlled planet Bomir is suddenly under attack and calling for Republic aid. The Republic blockade above the planet is just not enough, as the Separatists are overwhelming them. In the communications room inside of the temple, Yoda, Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, and Luminara Unduli say they will send help, and then they discuss their options. Mundi suggested Kenobi in order to get his mind off of what is going on with Satine on Mandalore. Not long ago, Duchess Satine requested help from the Jedi as her planet was being overrun by Prime Minister Olmec and the group known as Death Watch. She asked specifically for Kenobi, but the Jedi could not interfere, as it was an internal matter rather than something involving the Separatists. Yoda agreed that it should be Kenobi, but when he called for him, there was no answer. So Windu would run through the temple to Kenobi's quarters, and they were empty. And from the next door room, Windu could hear the sounds of machines whirring and being put together. Anakin was hard at work with his hobbies, putting together droids for fun in his own room. And Windu entered, then asked if Anakin knew where Obi Wan was. With a sly smile, Anakin simply said that he let Obi Wan borrow a ship. Obi Wan, without the permission of the Jedi, went to Mandalore. And Windu shook his head. No wonder Anakin was so comfortable disobeying the Council. But now Windu said that Anakin must replace Obi Wan on this mission to Bomir. The Separatists are attacking, and coincidentally, the planet was right next to Mandalore. Anakin accepted, and he got his men ready for battle. On Mandalore, Obi-Wan Kenobi arrived a while ago, and was going through the steps to rescue Satine from her cell. Satine was arrested after Pre Vizsla, Maul, and Olmec took over Mandalore, using the crime families to assist them. Vizsla was now saying that Mandalore was free from the weak rule, and it would return to its warrior ways. But in her cell, Obi-Wan would find and free Satine, and the two of them were running through the prison now, down to their ship. As the two of them ran, Mandalorians loyal to the Death Watch chased them down, and Obi-Wan and Satine boarded Anakin's ship, the old, broken-down Twilight ship. As they rose into the air, Satine called her sister for help, and Obi-Wan accessed a Jedi signal that would send a message to any Jedi within a short range. He asked for help on Mandalore, as he and the Duchess are in grave danger, and then their ship was shot down. The two of them jumped out of it, slamming into the ground, and Obi-Wan slowly looked up to see Maul. Above Bomir, Anakin, Ahsoka, and the 501st were showing why they were the best of the Republic's Grand Army. The Separatist surprise attack was failing quickly as Anakin weaved in and out of squads of Vulture droids. He and Ahsoka spun across each other, firing on the engines of a Separatist capital ship without shields, destroying it, flying through the explosion together. Anakin would call over to Ahsoka, saying she's doing excellent work, and a moment later, R2-D2 said that he's received a coded message from Mandalore. Anakin blew up another group of droids, then told R2 to play it. The message was of Obi-Wan, and he was going down in Anakin's ship, asking for help. Anakin heard this, then considered his options. He knew what he had to do, so he called to Rex, Ahsoka, and Yularen, saying they'll have to finish this battle without him. And as a parting gift, Anakin cut through another huge ship, before jumping through it to hyperspace for Mandalore. And in hyperspace, Anakin would come up with a plan. He had R2 record a message that he would play to whoever was holding Kenobi captive. It was Anakin trying to just be intimidating, hopefully buying enough time for him to break through a window or something unexpected. He would help Obi-Wan and his girlfriend. Inside of the palace on Mandalore, Obi-Wan was being held by two of the Death Watch Mandalorians, as Maul was speaking to him, and then he suddenly lifted Satine into the air. Obi-Wan gasped, and suddenly he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. In the building just outside of the palace, Obi-Wan could see Anakin climbing it. Obi-Wan had to stifle a relieved laugh, and instead he decided to buy time for whatever plan Anakin was using. Outside of the palace, Anakin was climbing, and he finally got to a rooftop that he could see inside of the palace from, and he saw Obi-Wan, Olmec, Satine, and a group of Mandalorians, but also Maul and Savage. Obi-Wan was right to call for help, Anakin thought, and now he just waited for R2 to show up and play his message, put fear into the hearts of those holding Obi-Wan captive. And Anakin looked to the palace door as R2 rolled in, but he got caught on the side of the door and spun around before falling flat on his droid face. Anakin sighed, then prepared to leap into the palace. This distraction would be good enough. and in the palace, everyone stopped what they were doing as this astromech flopped to the ground and beeped with embarrassment. Maul ordered a couple Mandalorians to go check it out, but a moment later, the window behind Maul shattered as Anakin crashed inside, lightsaber ignited, and Anakin cut through the stomach of Savage. The Zabrak gasped before falling in 2 pieces to the ground. Maul was distracted and in disbelief, so Obi Wan called the Darksaber to his hand and cut down all of the Mandalorians around him as Satine fell to the ground and began taking Olmec in hand-to-hand combat. Maul screamed out in rage, then ignited his red saber and jumped for Anakin. The two of them began dueling now, as Obi-Wan called his own lightsaber back to him and began taking on all of the Mandalorians in here with the Darksaber and his blue saber. Satine landed a punch on Olmec, then pulled out her pistol and shot him with a disabler, and he was knocked out. She then looked to Anakin, now dueling with Maul, then to Obi-Wan as he cut down the last of the Death Watch reinforcements, then moved towards Anakin and Maul. Maul broke off from clashing with Anakin, then stared down both him and Kenobi. There were fires all throughout the room. The Death Watch warriors were dead. Olmec was knocked out. Savage was just cut in half, just like Maul was on Naboo. Anger burned inside of Maul, and he had to center himself. Focus on the anger, control it, use it to defeat these Jedi. He ignited the second side of his saber, and he growled before hurling himself at Skywalker and Kenobi. Maul swung at the two of them with pure strength, moving with speed born of years of hatred for the Jedi. Anakin flipped over Maul, striking for his head in the air, but Maul blocked it and elbowed him before swinging at Kenobi. The Jedi Master swung high and low, but Maul was ready, pushing Obi-Wan backwards as Anakin rejoined the fight, jumping over a quick strike, then having his attacks blocked, before lining up once more with Obi-Wan. The 3 fighters regained their composure as Maul bared his teeth, then moved back in with lethal swings. Far from Mandalore, in the capital city of Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine was overlooking the traffic of the great city as he closed his eyes, feeling a sudden vergence in the Force. It was Maul. Up to this point, Darth Sidious refused to give Maul his attention, but he could feel his unlocked power now, and so he decided it was time he'd take care of this loose end. He had his ship readied and prepared to take off to Mandalore, not as Palpatine, but as Sidious. Only he did not know that Skywalker and Kenobi were also there. Back on Mandalore, the 3 warriors, Skywalker, Kenobi, and Maul, were now fighting outside of the palace. Maul drew them out here, thinking his Death Watch Mandalorians would come to aid him. But instead, the 3 of them found a reborn civil war, as Bo-Katan was leading those loyal to Satine against those loyal to Maul. Mandalore has become a battleground reminiscent of old times, and Maul was beginning to falter under the strikes of the 2 Jedi. He'd heard stories of Skywalker and Kenobi together, a lethal duo that could do anything together. Maul didn't understand how true those stories truly were until now. It was like 2 Jedi fighting together to become one. Their lightsaber styles perfectly meshed, as Kenobi would take the defensive, wearing down Maul until Anakin jumped in with his own offensive strikes, pushing Maul backwards as Kenobi jumped back into the duel. This would continue into the fray of Mandalorians fighting each other, and finally, Anakin cut into the lightsaber of Maul, sending half of it tumbling away. Maul stumbled backwards himself, and a stray missile from the Mandalorian battle landed nearby, and Maul was knocked to the ground. As he looked up, 2 blue lightsabers were in his face, and Satine ran up to them, handing Obi-Wan a pair of ancient handcuffs, used in the old Jedi Mandalorian war days, to restrain the force of anyone wearing them. Maul was placed in the cuffs, and Obi-Wan noticed for the first time now that Satine has put on her old Mandalorian armor. She was an excellent fighter when need be, she just didn't ever want to be. But now she asked Anakin and Obi-Wan to help her take back Mandalore. The 2 Jedi agreed, and they ran into battle alongside Satine and Bo-Katan, as Maul was taken back into the palace, placed into a cell with a group of Mandalorian loyalists guarding him. Back in the new Mandalorian Civil War, Obi-Wan Kenobi stood back-to-back with Satine. She fired her pistol while Obi-Wan defended her, and their chemistry from years together was better than ever. Anakin Skywalker quickly met Bo-Katan, and the 2 of them quickly worked well together, as they weren't exactly afraid to do what was necessary. Anakin's blue lightsaber was a blur of strength, as Bo flew around him, firing amidst the chaos. The battle raged across Mandalore's surface, blaster bolts, lightsaber clashes echoing through the city. Joining back together, Obi-Wan and Anakin displayed their brotherhood in combat, their lightsabers flashing as they cut through waves of Death Watch soldiers. Satine and Bo, sisters together again, utilized their knowledge of Mandalore's terrain to lead their forces on the attack, keeping the Death Watch forces off balance, unable to truly fight back. And in the end, after a long fight, the two Jedi and the Mandalorian resistance had the Death Watch scrambling to escape and go into hiding as the people of Mandalore began to rise up from their homes, pushing the Death Watch away. Seeing Satine herself rise up and fight back against these terrorists proved to the people who the true leader was. And when the battle was over, Anakin and Obi Wan re-entered the palace to confront Maul. They were going to bring him to Coruscant, show the Jedi Council why going to Mandalore was necessary. And as the two Jedi got to Maul's cell, he sat in the corner, clearly heartbroken over the loss of Savage and his failure to rise up using Mandalore. Anakin and Obi Wan were about to grab him when Anakin suddenly paused. He felt a dark presence, darker than anything before, more evil than Ventress, Dooku, and Maul combined. And both Obi-Wan and Anakin saw Maul suddenly look up in fear and say, "Master." From the other side of the palace, Darth Sidious slowly entered with his hood up to see Maul, but he was in captivity with two Jedi. Of course, Anakin and Obi-Wan were here. Sidious knew now that this was not the time to fight, and he quickly turned to leave, hoping that he was not noticed. But both Anakin and Obi-Wan heard Maul say that his master was here. That meant Darth Sidious, the hidden Sith Lord, was somehow here, and they saw a hooded figure quickly leaving the palace. Before the two Jedi could chase him down, Maul said they will need his help. Obi-Wan said he doesn't think so, but then Maul decided to reveal the truth. He said that Sidious is Palpatine, and he wants revenge against Sidious more than anything else. Anakin and Obi-Wan could barely believe it, but they sensed no deception within Maul. Obi-Wan decided it was worth it, they would need him. He cut off Maul's cuffs and handed him the Darksaber, saying that if he does anything stupid at all, he will be killed without hesitation. Maul said he expects nothing less, then told him to hurry before they lose Sidious. Anakin and Obi-Wan did not trust Maul at all, but defeating Sidious meant ending this war. This was a chance worth taking, and so Kenobi, Skywalker, and Maul knew that they could take Sidious together. The three of them sprinted after Sidious, who moved like a shadow through the city, getting onto a turbo lift. Skywalker, Kenobi, and Maul got onto one as well, and chased him through the tunnels of Mandalore. Anakin closed his eyes, feeling into the Force, and to his dismay, he could sense Palpatine, if he truly put his mind to it. This meant that the leader of the Republic also led the Separatists, and no matter how much Anakin previously thought of Palpatine as a friend, he knew that today he has to die. The turbo lift would come to an end, and Sidious ran to his ship, but before he could board it, Anakin's lightsaber flew through the air, slicing through the engines, causing the ship to slowly explode and fall off of the edge of the landing platform. Now, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Maul looked at the back of Sidious. His hood was blowing in the wind as both of his hands reached out, and two red lightsabers ignited. Anakin and Obi-Wan wanted to end this war right here, while Maul planned to kill Sidious and then rise to power in the chaos that was to follow. Sidious didn't want to have to do this, but he was left with truly no choice. These three would have to die or surrender today. The air was filled with tension as Anakin, Maul, and Obi-Wan circled the Sith Lord, preparing for the galaxy-changing duel. The sudden clash of lightsabers would echo off of the stone walls as the fight quickly moved into the Mandalore tunnels. Sidious moved at his rivals, his red blades clashing with all three fighters with ease. Anakin was fighting with a mix of anger and confusion, as he still could not believe that Palpatine was Sidious. His movements were laced with intent to defeat the Sith, end this war once and for all. Obi-Wan was countering Sidious's moves with his own defensive style. It was no secret that Sidious was stronger than him, but if he could just stay alive, then he knew that the three of them could win. Maul was driven by his own thirst for vengeance. He unleashed his own fury upon his former master. The Darksaber clashed again and again with the double blades of Sidious, as he wanted nothing more than to strike him down. The battle raged on through the tunnels, lightsabers clashing against lightsabers, sparks were flying into the darkness as Jedi and Sith fought. The battle continued, with no one winning, until Maul got overly aggressive, falling for Sidious as bait, and a strong swing caused Maul to be off balance, as Sidious then laughed, twirling his two blades, stabbing them through the chest of Maul. The former Sith gasped, then looked down as Sidious continued laughing. But with anger like never before, Maul used his last bits of strength to grab the lightsabers in his chest, holding them in place. Sidious tried to pull away, but he couldn't, and Maul used a force push, sending Sidious back before he fell dead on the cold ground. Now Anakin and Obi Wan moved in on Sidious, who no longer had his lightsabers. Sidious shot lightning at them, but they deflected it, then moved in swinging at the Dark Lord, and Sidious flipped over them, but Anakin reached up, cutting Sidious through both legs and an arm as he flopped to the ground with a scream of pain and anger. Obi-Wan looked to Anakin, saying that they need to bring Palpatine back to Coruscant for questioning, but Anakin twirled his saber, stabbing it through the spine of Sidious, killing him immediately. Obi-Wan sighed as Anakin turned and began walking away towards Palpatine's ship. Obi-Wan would eventually follow him, and inside of Palpatine's ship, they would find recent messages to Dooku. Palpatine was too overconfident to delete the evidence on his ship. It was his downfall. And they learned that Dooku and Grievous were at the prison spire on Stigan Prime, waiting for Sidious to deliver Maul. Sidious originally came to Mandalore intending to kill Savage and capture Maul for later uses, but now Dooku and Grievous were sitting ducks there. The Jedi would contact the Jedi Council and tell them everything, and the Council would decide that they need to launch an all-out attack on the prison spire, kill Dooku and Grievous before the war gets out of hand without Palpatine around anymore. There was no time for debate, and so every council member available would gather a fleet and go to Stigan Prime. They knew that if Dooku learned of Palpatine's death, he would take the full forces of the Separatists more than ever before, and the Republic could still lose this war. And as they did that, Anakin and Obi-Wan returned to the palace to find Satine waiting for them. She told Obi-Wan that the fight for Mandalore has turned in their favor, and then she said the word, asking Obi-Wan if he would stay with her. Obi-Wan smiled, and Anakin patted Obi-Wan on the back, telling him to follow his heart. Obi-Wan looked to Anakin with joy, and he too told Anakin to follow his heart, then winked as he went and hugged Satine. Anakin wondered what this meant, but deep down, he knew that Obi-Wan knew about Padme. So with a smile, Anakin would leave Mandalore, and upon returning to Coruscant, he would learn that the Council was successful in destroying the prison spire, completely catching Dooku and Grievous off guard, and the war could soon hopefully come to an end. Ultimately, the Clone Wars would go on for another couple of months, as the Separatist Council did not want to surrender, but without Dooku, Sidious, and Grievous, the Separatist planets would ultimately rejoin the Republic in a peace treaty proposed by Chancellor Padme Amidala. After the events on Mandalore, the Jedi said that Dooku and Grievous assassinated Palpatine, and so they attacked Stigan Prime and blew up the spire to get revenge for Palpatine. The Republic was content with this, and it helped them to end this war and promote Padme to Chancellor. When the war would finally end, Anakin would leave the Jedi Order and become the personal security leader for Padme, and the two of them would soon travel to Mandalore to visit with Duchess Satine and her personal protector, Obi Wan Kenobi. With Anakin and Obi Wan both out of the Order and with their loves, this was an extremely happy meeting that would see Mandalore having peace under Satine's rule, while the four of them would share a celebratory dinner. Within years, both Anakin and Padme and Obi-Wan and Satine would have children. These children would be Force-sensitive, but they would not initially join the Order, at least not until Anakin and Obi-Wan deemed them ready. They didn't have any ill intent towards the Jedi, it just wasn't the path for them. So when their children were ready to be trained, Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan's child, Jin, named after Qui-Gon Jinn, would go to the Jedi Temple and they would begin training, to be trained under masters like Plo Koon, Mace Windu, and Ahsoka Tano. And folks, that is our story for today. It's fairly similar to the one I did a little bit ago, where it's Anakin, Obi-Wan, Sidious, the Dooku one I did, where Obi-Wan basically kills Dooku instead of Anakin. It's basically just centered around Anakin and Obi-Wan, as I just love doing these stories. It's different, it kind of stays on Mandalore the whole time, but I really, enjoyed this one, just like I typically do. Hope you guys did as well. Just to go through it a bit, I wanted to add a bit of humor here with R2-D2, and the plan with R2 and Anakin. Anakin crafting this message for R2 to roll in with and give to all of them, only for him to do the sort of roll in that we see in Revenge of the Sith, crashing into a wall and just falling to the ground. A little bit of humor, can't hurt anyone. It was cool to just kind of introduce a whole different battle. I made up the whole battle on, what's the planet even called that I made up? Bandamir. That's just a planet I found next to Mandalore, decided, hey, let's launch an attack there that will allow Obi-Wan to reach out to Anakin and call for help. So that was what happened there. Anyways, ultimately wanted to end this I always knew how this was going to end, with Anakin and Obi Wan happy with Padme and Satine, because that's how we do it around here for the most part. We've got our dark side endings, but once in a while, or for the most part, we're going to do it like this. As far as Sidious, Palpatine, I think it makes sense for him to still go to Mandalore in this scenario, just like we see in the Clone Wars. Ultimately, I don't think he'd want to fight the Jedi and Maul, and, maybe he can escape and just prolong the war, but I thought, hey, what about a path where Maul, convinces the Jedi to let him fight Sidious? It's fairly unrealistic, yeah, I get that, maybe, but Maul, above all, once everything else was destroyed, kind of thinks, hey, what if I can still kill Sidious? And ultimately, he plays a pretty large role in doing that, so hope you guys enjoyed that part, wasn't too far-fetched. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.